Who would become leader of Israel after Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Numbers chapter 27. We're going to be reading from verses 12 to 23. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 27, beginning of verse 12. Now the Lord said to Moses, "Go up into this Mount Abarim, and see the land which I have given to the children of Israel. And when you have seen it, you shall also be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother was gathered. For in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to hallow me at the waters before their eyes. These are the waters at Meribah, at Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin." Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, "Let the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, who may go out before them and go in before them, who may lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep which have no shepherd." And the Lord said to Moses, "Take Joshua the son of Nun with you, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him. Set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and inaugurate him in their sight. And you shall give some of your authority to him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of the Urim. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, he and all the children of Israel with him, all the congregation." So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation. And he laid his hands on him and inaugurated him, just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. In our last lesson, we had Moses dealing with an issue of inheritance. A man in Israel, Zelophehad, had died only having daughters. Since inheritance was divided at that time by sons, when the land of Israel would be divided by tribe and household, Zelophehad's family would receive no inheritance, and these daughters likely would have become destitute. So these women pleaded before Moses that since their father was not involved in the rebellion of Korah, but had died because of God's punishment of 40 years in the wilderness wandering, that they be able to inherit what would have been his. Moses took the matter before God, and God agreed. In fact, he set down a general rule that if a man died having no sons, that his daughters could inherit what would have been given to his sons. If the man had no children, then the inheritance would remain in his family, with his next closest relative receiving the inheritance. This shows us that God was fair in his dealings with women, just as he is fair today. Coming out of verse 12, we get God telling Moses to go up onto a mountain in order to see the promised land, for he would not enter it. As to whether this is presented to us in chronological order is hard to say, but it could be that this order was given and shortly thereafter done by Moses due to the fact that we're really close to the time when Israel would attack Jericho. From other passages in Numbers and Deuteronomy, Abarim appears to be a mountain range, not a specific mountain, for we'll find that the specific mountain that Moses climbed was Mount Nebo. Why was Moses not going to enter the promised land? Because he did not hallow God before Israel at Kadesh, when Israel complained for water. If you recall from Numbers 20, instead of speaking to the rock and getting water from the rock that way, Moses struck the rock in anger. In doing this, he was attributing the miracle to himself rather than God, and for this Moses and Aaron would not enter the promised land. Aaron had died earlier that year at Mount Hor, with Eleazar replacing him as high priest, while Moses was going to die here in the plains of Moab, just before Israel crossed over the Jordan to enter the promised land. Because of his sin, God didn't have to allow Moses to see the promised land, for he didn't allow Aaron to see it. But God in his mercy here allowed the leader of Israel to see what Israel would possess after he died. With Moses dying, though, the question would be, who would lead Israel over the Jordan? With Aaron, the line of succession for the high priest was firmly laid out by God. However, a successor to Moses had not been. Moses did not want the children of Israel to go without a leader here, for that would be like a sheep having no shepherd. If that phrase sounds familiar, it's because Jesus said the same thing in Matthew 9:36, which says, "But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd." Moses could have been bitter that he wasn't going to get to lead Israel into Canaan, for he had led them this far and put up with all of their complaining. But no, he was concerned for Israel and so asked God to appoint for them a new leader. God agreed and told Moses to select Joshua, the son of Nun, a man who was one of the spies who said that they could take the land of Canaan 40 years earlier, and a man who had been Moses' assistant throughout this time to be his replacement. Joshua had been given the Spirit, meaning the Holy Spirit, which allowed him to properly lead the people. So that there was no confusion as to who was the leader or a rebellion against Joshua after Moses died, Joshua was to be inaugurated in the sight of the people while Moses was still alive. He would be brought before the congregation and before Eleazar the high priest, and Moses would lay his hands on Joshua, a sign that he had been selected for this purpose. However, Joshua would only receive some of the authority that Moses had. What does this mean? That while Joshua would be the leader of Israel and would be able to speak prophetically, he was not going to take Moses' role as lawgiver. The law would be completed under Moses, and if God wanted to speak anything concerning religious matters, he would speak through the high priest, using the Urim that was made for that purpose. Therefore, after Moses, the separation between the law and the prophets would be complete, and those duties would be fully separated under this covenant with Israel. It would only be when Jesus died on the cross and became king that these roles were united once again. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 28, verses 1 to 8, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.